Welcome, Uffe, to Metallarium Pages. It's a pleasure to talk with you about Mezzrow. This new album embraces the awakening and more things related to the metal world in general. So we started by asking, how are you doing today, and how is the band during the last couple of years? Because your previous album, or your return back album, it was released in 2023.
Yeah, right now I'm really good. It's always cool to release a new album. We have worked with really hard with this one. We started the writing process in September of 2023, so it's been a while, but now it's time to release this beast. But during these 2 years, since we released Summoned by Demons, which was our reunion album, you could say that, it's been a special time, and we've discovered the music business again. And it's quite different from when we started out in 1987. And there was a big gap, of course, between 1993, when we stopped playing, and 2021, when we started again. So it was like 30 years. But it's right now the band is we're really excited about the new album, and we are ready to go out on the road if we get the chance. It's sort of like that.
Okay. So, well, and let's talk about a little more for Embrace of Awakening. And when do you decide writing songs for this new album? And perhaps do you rescue any compositions for the previous one, for the Summoned by Demons?
Yeah, well, to begin with, we released a single like a year ago, and As Fear Unfolds. And that song was a leftover, actually, from Summoned by Demons. And it's always good to have something to release between albums, so people know that you're still in progress. But we started the writing process, as I said before, in September 2023, and we had no idea in which direction we would go. But we made sure that the new songs will work better live, because some of the songs on Some of the Demons are a bit tricky to play live. They don't work as good as the old songs, but on record they are better. So we when we talked about the new songs, we totally agreed in the band that we would be more direct, and it would that they would fit more when we play live. That was the important thing. But from there on, we just wrote, and thought that let's see what this takes us.
Okay, I understand about this one. Well, in this kind of situation, if we're talking about more for this Enter Awakening, so how do you relate the concept of the album with the name, with the cover art, and more things related? For you, what is the most important thing when you create an album? How do you relate all this concept? The name, the cover art, the lyrics, and especially the music, when you focus more on the thrash metal area?
So we were really, for us, it's always important to keep the roots. And the roots for us are the Bay Area sound, but also with a Swedish melodic sound. We have some Swedish melodic harmonies. You can relate them to perhaps some of the melodic death metal bands, how they play their riffs and stuff. But otherwise, especially me, since I write the lyrics, I was really concerned and at the same time inspired by what's going on in the world right now, and especially in Europe and maybe the US and Russia and everything that is going on right now. So that was one of the inspiration points for the lyrics. But I also write lyrics very metaphorically, and I think it's important also to spread a message, but in the right way. You must get people to think. Thrash metal is from the beginning a mix between punk and heavy metal. That's the main roots from the very start in the beginning of the 80s. And punk has always been a bit political. We are not a political band, but even so, I think it's important to write stuff in your lyrics that reflects on the world. I think that's very important, and I've done that. But also, we also have lyrics that are totally horror, you know, H.P. Lovecraft and Clive Barker and Dean Koontz and even Stephen King. So we really mix those kind of lyrics. The inspiration for the music, as I said, is the roots are in the Bay Area, but we also like Slayer, of course, and we mix all this with a Swedish melodic sound. And I think when you mix all that, you get sort of your own sound as well. So maybe some people will say, oh, it sounds like Slayer, or it sounds like Forbidden or Testament. But all people that I've talked to has different bands that they relate to. But Slayer is sort of a, you know, that many people say, oh, you sound like Slayer a bit. So fine. I think that's a compliment. I think the Slayer is and have always been a big inspiration for us. So that's the main parts in the music on the album, I think.
Okay. Well, let's talk about more now about the history for the Mezzrow, because you started the band in 1987 with a previous name with Necromancy, then changed to Dark Reaper and more things. Then you changed now for the actual name, but then you released an album in 1990. It became The Killing, the only album in the first era of Mezzrow. But then after that, you returned back in 2021 and released the album from 2023. So, and for this, why do you, for example, at that moment, why you didn't release more albums in the 90s? It was because the thrash metal, I remember, because the thrash metal anymore is and get attention for the media since the 90s. The death metal appear, then the alternative post-grunge or grunge appears in the world, and everything's forgot about the thrash metal. Perhaps it was the reason, or perhaps do you have more reason at that moment?
I think there are many reasons for thrash metal to fall back. But in Sweden, we had a big death metal wave rolling in 1990, and we sort of drowned in that with Mezzrow. We didn't get any attention during the beginning of the 90s, unfortunately. We wrote after we released Then Came the Killing, we had a kind of a good year. 1990 was a good year for us, but then we got kicked off our record company, and the main reason, there were many reasons for that, but thrash metal was on its way out, and many of our early heroes like Testament and Exodus and maybe Metallica, they slowed down. They were signed to major companies and major labels, and some of them wrote ballads, but they definitely slowed down. And we were in a mode that we wanted to still play thrash and kind of fast as well, but it didn't work out, and we didn't get any attention. We lost the record deal. And we didn't get a new one because everyone wanted to sign a death metal band by then. So we sort of, lost the inspiration. And this was in 1993. We decided to reunite again or restart the band again in 2021. And the reason for that was that we had a song on our bass player's computer, Connie. So me and Connie was on the Then Came the Killing album. I just to make that clear, I am an original member. I was there in 1987 when we formed the band. Connie came in a bit later, but he recorded the bass on Then Came the Killing. And me and him we've always had contact. And then our old guitarist from Mezzrow, Uffe, who died in 2018 from cancer. Me and Connie and Uffe wrote a song in 2010. And that song is on Summoned by Demons. It's song number 9. Dark Spirit Rising. And when we wrote that song in 2011, we forgot about it. And then when Staffe died, we decided to do that song in his honor. So that was the reason for recording that song. And then we found out, it's still as fun as it was in 1990. It was really fun. It felt natural to play thrash again. So we decided let's write some more songs. And from there on, it just, we wrote 10 songs. And also reformed with a couple of other guys that I knew. I played in a band called Rosicrucian in the mid-90s. So the guitarist, I found that guitarist, and he's very talented, Magnus Söderman. He also played in Night Rage at that time, a Greek-Swedish melodic death metal band. But anyway, so we got a band together again and recorded Stung Thy Demons, and we had no idea what to do with that. We had no idea what would happen after we recorded the album and released it. But we still think it's so fun to play, and we have played quite a lot beyond our plans, you could say that. So we really try to play live as much as we can, even though we still have daily works and families and all that. We try to balance those two things, playing music and, have a family life and work and everything. And it's quite difficult because we're all in our 50s. So it's tough to mix that sometimes, but right now it works very well.
Okay. Well, I understand for this one. Now, on this topic about this, so do you think that in some ways, because the time changed, the decades change, it's not like the 90s when you bring this kind of attention for the thrash metal, when thrash metal is not longer at that moment anymore. But now, do you think that the band evolved with this new concept of bring back this old sound of the thrash metal? And also, it's possible to go, so it's possible to go further with the sound of thrash metal, because mostly or us or the people, for like old people, we think that the thrash metal is a sound from the 80s. We don't have more bands like representative with a different sound of the 90s or for example 2000. There's no special band that you can say, hey, this band sounds from 2000s, because when you hear Municipal Waste, Warbringer, I don't know, there's a lot of bands, but that band sounds like the 80s with a lot of influence from the 80s.
Yes, I understand exactly. And you are absolutely right about this. There are no thrash metal bands that came through from the 2000. It was the old bands that regained their force again, or their inspiration again. I remember hearing Testament, The Gathering, and I thought that was a really good album. For instance, and that was like mid-90s or something like that. That one was really good. Exodus has always been playing all the time. We played with those guys in Slovenia, in Southern Europe last summer, and still super good live. It's always fun to watch them. Sadly, Slayer has quit playing, but do festivals from now and then. But all these bands still play. Definitely Testament, Creator still plays a lot, and they are in my age. They're like between 55 and 60 somewhere, and still have a big inspiration. Release good albums. I think the latest Testament is really cool. I think they have mixed sort of black metal with thrash in a very strange way, but I think it sounds cool. And at the same time, you can hear Testament. It's still Testament. And Testament was one of the reasons for Mezzrow to start the band. We really wanted to sound like Testament, or they've always been an inspiration for us. And see them still playing, it's very cool. So why can't we do that? I really think that we have brought something to the table. If you can express in that way, and I think our new album, Embrace the Awakening, is I think we have mixed the right parts, the right influences for this one, and but still, it sounds old school thrash, and I think you will never get away from that, because that's how we sound. On the other hand, in Sweden right now, we have dozens of new young thrash metal bands coming through. And that's very cool to see. And these guys are like 18 and 20, like us when we played in the 90s and in late 80s. And their inspiration is also very much Bay Area. But they have also inspirations from the German scene, the Teutonic scene, Creator, Destruction, Sodom. So they some of these bands we have a mix of thrash bands, but it's still thrash. And that because the death metal scene has always been in Sweden, we have many death metal bands right now also. But everyone sort of accepts each other. When we played in the late 80s and 90s, you couldn't be death metal and play thrash. And you couldn't play thrash and be death metal. So you have to be death metal and you have to be thrash. Now everyone accepts everything. You can a metal fan today could like Lorna Shore, they could like us, they could like Entombed, and they could also like Hammerfall. There's no boundaries between this. Back in the late 80s and the 90s, there was very much boundaries between the music genres.
Okay, well, that is true. That is now depends a lot of, well, mostly the thrash depends of the 80s now. Another common thing into this topic about the thrash metal is because, like Sweden is it's an amazing country for the metal scene, especially for the death metal, black metal, especially for these two styles. Create new waves, especially the first band for black metal came from Sweden, like Battery. Battery is the first band from black metal since the 80s. For me, it's not King Diamond, Venom, that's not black metal for me. It's even I was very young when I heard that band, but for me, it's Battery until the end. Will be and the first band. So in this kind of situation, so why Sweden always never bring to the metal scene like a huge band like Testament, like Metallica, like Anthrax in the thrash metal? You just can recognize Sweden for the extremes from the extreme metal.
Yeah, and the reason for us not bringing a good thrash band to the scene from the beginning is that we never had, the thrash bands from the States. They were inspired by the new wave of British heavy metal, and they mixed that with sort of punk, with the attitude from punk and the technique from metal. But when we started playing thrash in Sweden in like 1985, 86, we were inspired by the American thrash bands. So we didn't have the same roots, and that's why we didn't create anything by ourselves. It's not our sound. It's another sound. So there no one can say, "Oh, that's a Swedish thrash band," but you could hear it's an American thrash band. And that's why we never brought none of these thrash bands in Sweden sort of survived, because we didn't create anything of our own. And that was a big problem. But still, we had loads of fun, and we played thrash, and we sounded kind of good, but it wasn't unique in any way. But Metallica was unique when they came through. And I think that's why, the death metal wave in Sweden is unique. Those guys, you have to be impressed by the death metal scene in 1990 or and onwards, and also the Gothenburg sound. Both these genres are unique. Those bands created something of their own, and that's why they have been gotten so big. So, for instance, In Flames or At the Gates from Gothenburg, and you have Entombed and Dismember from Stockholm. You can hear quite fast that it's a Stockholm sounding death metal band, even though they are from the States. You can hear that they have inspiration from Stockholm or from Gothenburg. Thrash never got through in Sweden in that way. We never, as I said, we never created our own thrash sound.
That is correct. That is completely correct. But I never hear a band like with a sound, with a personal sound like death metal has or the black metal has there. And the only band that I remember very well that is more like a mixture with the group style, which transmits the Hunted. The Hunt is like some part metal with groove, but either way, it belongs to the sound from US with influence with Testament, with the old bands from the 80s. Either way, they tried to do something different, but in some ways, it's with influence from the 80s. Well, either way,
absolutely. The Haunted is if you listen to the new Haunted album. It's very much Slayer. Yeah, it's very Slayer.
It's completely Slayer. That's also the curious thing because the bands never tried to play like Slayer. Something the first option it was more groove at the beginning, but then more I don't know why the last album is more thrash or more Slayer influence. Well, now returning back to the Mezzrow and this kind of topic. So for you, how many things changed since you created the band in 1987 with the first name, or also with the Mezzrow name, and now when you return back with the thrash metal? I know that thrash metal is not popular than the 80s. That's completely normal. But for you, how many things changed since you created the band, and now you have a ton of bands trying to sound like the old bands? No band's different now.
When we restarted the band, we didn't know any other way than play like we did in the 80s. And but Magnus, our guitarist, he's very talented, and he came from the melodic death metal scene, so he brought that to us. So when we write songs, we have changed the approach a bit when it comes to, I'm the old school guy. I am the Bay Area guy. You know, for me, thrash is Forbidden, Violence, Testament, Death Angel, you know, Heathen. But for Magnus, it's like he listens to everything. And you can hear that in his songs. And that's a big change for us. And that is one of the inspiration for us, I think, when it comes to writing the choruses in the songs. But it's not. If you listen to the first album, Then Came the Killing, it's every song sounds the same almost. You can some of the songs are really cool and everything, but if you listen to the whole album, you get sort of bored of the 4 or 5 songs perhaps, because they are very much alike. Nowadays we try to be a bit different. Each song will live its own life, and I think that's a big change from the 90s or from the 80s as well. But you must remember also that in the 80s I was like 18 years old when I started playing, and when you're 18 years old or 20, you play with your heart. You don't play so much with your brain. Nowadays it's almost the opposite. You still have your heart, but you use the brain a bit more. So you think about music in another way, perhaps in a more mature way, and that's not strange to do that because you are much older. So that's a big change, I think, from back in the day. But as I said before, it's very cool to see that so many bands still play. And in our age, because we play with them sometimes. FKU, for instance, we have played with them a couple of times, and they were playing in the late 80s. So and a lot of more bands still they have inspiration from the old days, and there's a lot of focus on what happened in Sweden during the 80s. And I mean, in I think it was in 1989 or something like that, we played with all these big death metal bands. They were starting to emerge in the late 80s. And so we played on festivals with them a couple of times. And back then we were headlining. I mean, nowadays many of those bands are very famous for their thing. So the scene has the whole music world. We have discovered that the whole music world is so much different from the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s. Also, of course, because of social medias, all this information that surrounds every band are easy to access because of the internet. It's always been like that. And internet didn't exist when we started playing, so we had to send letters. I had actually a lot of contacts with in Chile with many of the underground magazines in Chile at that time, like 6 or 7 magazines. When we had tape trading, and we were in their magazines, and they sent their magazines to me, and it was really cool. South America was sort of growing already in the late 80s, I think.
Okay. I understand. Okay, I understand. Now we're returning back to this embrace the awakening. So
Yeah.
I'm more related with the promotion. So what kind of plans do you have to promote this embrace the awakening? Perhaps you will embark in some tours there. Perhaps you will release more videos, or perhaps who knows? You're already working on a new album as you return back with a lot of ideas since 2020 or since 2021 return.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about ideas for a new album. We actually have 4 more songs written during the period for Embrace the Awakening. So these songs will be released during the spring 2026. So they are not ready, but we have done pre-production for those 4 songs, and then we have another. I think we have ideas for a couple of more songs as well, but we haven't started writing, anything new yet. But it will happen, of course. But the promotion for the new record we will play a couple of gigs. No tours yet booked in the near future, but we will go to Germany, I think, in April, and do a smaller tour, and then hopefully we'll play in some festivals in Europe during the summer. That's a main goal for us, to play in down in Germany or Italy or Spain or whatever. But we also aim. One of the big when we sat down and talked about how we would approach the whole thing, we all agreed on that we want to play in places that we've never been to. So, for instance, we would really like to go to South America and play. So that's one of the goals for us: go to South America, also Japan. It's a big goal to go to East Asia and stuff. That's sort of one of our own personal goals, or whatever you want to call it. But that's important for us to grow to the next album. It's to play to more people in over the whole world. But I don't know. The competition is very, very strong. It's tough to get a slot on festivals nowadays. I've had a lot of contacts with different festivals. I don't know which we will play at, but it's tough. It's very tough.
Okay. So we are very close to this interview, Uffe. So, and for this situation, well, there is a lot now. You can see that all the records sounds amazing. You were there when with the start of the thrash metal appears in the world. When I remember very well when I hear like 20 bands in the end of the 80s, and but from these 20 bands, like all musicians that are not great, perfect, just play as they can at that moment. The producer is not well. You find 20 records, but 15 records or 10 records sounds amazing. The other 10, it's forgotten now. But now, we have 30 releases or 40 releases per weekend. That's completely different because 20 records, it was in 5 years. Now we have 30 releases just per 1 week. That's completely different. That's completely different now. And now, so how do you see this about this cleanness or all the technicality just in metal? Because the other style will not just in metal. You can see that bands play so perfect, and none of these bands has a bad record.
Yeah, as you said, back in the late 80s, it was impossible to sound good if you weren't good. You have to be good to sound good.
Yep.
That was the thing, and you heard directly if a band was bad at playing. You could hear easily when a band wasn't good, and for me personally, that wasn't interesting. And that's why I think we were inspired by the American bands, because all American bands sounded really good. You can hear this Bay Area sound. The Bay Area bands that came through were really, really good at playing. They were good musicians. Nowadays, you can be a bad musician but still sound good because all technique in the studio. And I know this also because our other guitarist, Ronny Björnström, he works as a mix. He is a producer. He's mixing and he's mastering, and he does that for a living. So of course, I've talked a lot to him about this, and all his productions are very clean, pristine, and his production wise, he's really, really good. And of course, he does our albums as well. So you get this sort of more clean sound. And if you listen to the latest Testament albums, they sound more clean than, for instance, The Legacy and The New Order. But I think we have managed to sort of balance that. I think we have a lot of heart in the sound, but we also sound sort of clean with an old school touch. But if you lose that old school touch, I think you get uninteresting.
Okay. Well, Uffe, we arrived to the sad moment of this interview. Thank you very much for your time. It was a tremendous pleasure with you about the Mezzrow, this last album. Congratulations on this new one. And
thank you.
Perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Metallerium followers?
Of course, stay metal out there. And remember, once a thrasher, always a thrasher.